What's going on, everyone? Today we have this back here. We're working on this today because I got some issues with the oil line that we need to work out, and that's for the turbo. So it's a big problem, but that's what we're going to start with today. And then I want to see if a big tire, is going to work on the car. So let's get started. I want to start by saying this is not a sponsored video. And what happened about a week ago, I was trying to take the oil pressure sending unit off the side of the engine, and I twisted the block that also houses that and the oil feed line for the turbo, and then it cracked, and I was kind of sick of it, so I thought I'm just gonna get a new feed line. So what I did was about a 48-inch braided line, and I also bought a T3 and T4, is what it says, fitting for the feed on top of the turbo. Now, I was looking at the Godzilla Raceworks kit for this, but I just wasn't ready or prepared at the time to spend that money on it. But it probably would have been a lot easier than this. That feed hole, when I first got it, it was a 10AN and not a 4AN. It also, this one now, after I had to reship it, it had a restrictor hole about like that. And I know that ball bearing turbos like to be a little bit restricted, but journal bearing turbos, what this is, well, this is what I read online. They like a little bit more oil. So I looked into it, and the restrictor hole was a little bit too small. So I drilled it out a little bit to a 0.125. And if that's too big, well, then we're going to have more issues. I'm just have to buy a new one, so on and so forth. If it's too small, I can always take this one off, drill it out some, but that's not the point. I still don't have all the parts for this. I still need to adapt from I'm not sure what size it is yet, but it's a little bit bigger threads to a little bit smaller 1/8-inch thread for the plate on the other side of the engine. Now, enough talking, let's get to work. I don't want to talk about how difficult this was, because I took it off, I went to thread this on here, or thread that on there, and it tried to cross thread it, and then it messed up the threads, then I had to retap it, and then I don't think the retap was quite the same threads, but it worked, and it's on there, and it's all solid. So if it leaks, we're going to have another issue, but it tried to cross thread way too easy. We're just going to deal with it for now. Going to run that behind everything and T-fitting it so we can put it together. So it's ran right through here by the EGR, which is disconnected, through to the other side, and I'm probably going to get clamps for it so it can not sit how it is, so it can sort of be free, but I'm gonna have to grab those next time. Over here, I think I'm going to go behind the heater line. Yes, this car still has a heater, and it's going to go into the top of the block, which if you're unfamiliar with these cars, I'll show it to you. Here. This goes into the side of the block. That's the sending unit. And that's where it tees off. And when I was trying to undo the sending unit, for some reason it was super tight and went sideways. Actually, yeah, it went sideways and then broke the side of the line. So that's another pain for it. And this car hasn't been around or anything for a while. And I'll show you another thing that I've done. I still need to do some finishing touches because it's not all perfect yet. I also need to get that sending unit in to finish this. I might also need to redo one of the wires, but that's in a little bit. Here, I don't have the battery hooked up, but we got the water temp gauge, which should work. All of it's hooked up. The oil pressure gauge, I do not have the sending unit on, as I've said, but the battery gauge or voltmeter, don't have that hooked up yet either, because it's just 2 wires. I just haven't. The tachometer is probably next on the list, just because, well, unless one of the grounds I've messed with is going to make that one work, then we still have it. Gas gauge, mystery issue, it just died one day. The speedometer, I need to go grab another cable that I do have, because where it goes into the transmission, it's broken. Like, there's a little peg that goes into the side of the gear, and between that and the cable, it's just all sheared off. But yeah, I can't wait for this to actually be roadworthy, because then it's going to the frame shop. I just want to mention something real quick. Those will fit, and they are not going on the car. 18s look massive on these cars, first of all. Second of all, this, I know it's not the best quarter panel to do this with for some reason, but this is the one that we're going to use because the other one, of course, has a wall next to it. These will fit at about right there. And that leaves, let's ignore this, barely any lip to cover it. I'd actually probably have to roll this or go flares, and I don't really want flares. However, I do want wider quarter panels, because there's one car in particular that I really like that I would totally model that body kit after. But these hit right on the trailing arm as they are. So they'd probably have to be out a little bit more. That would be a safe distance, but they clear the shock tower, or the shock. They actually sit under it still at this level. If I were to drop it down some with lowering springs, I think it would still fit. Just barely. Like, really just barely. But if I were to do coilovers, which, why wouldn't? I mean, you know, I think they would fit. But these are still massively wide. So I think right now, it would not get a 275 40/18. I think I'm looking at 250s. I actually don't think that's a size. I was looking at 245s for the rear, and having a 17 by 9 with 0 backspacing. However, I cannot find those wheels, and I have other things to do before. I just wanted to see if this would even fit in the wheel well, which it does with some room to spare, but it would fill that tire gap up. I think I saw a meme once. Now, don't quote me on this, but these tires would fill up TJ Hunt's Miata wheel gap that flamingos wouldn't fit in there anymore. I don't know if that's anything relevant, but that's what I've heard. But let's just for fun, look at the difference between a 215 and a 275. Also, one of them's quite a bit taller because of the aspect ratio. So, I'm gonna stop there. We're gonna put the tire back on. And it's been a long day. I still need to figure this out with some other things. We're going to start on the intercooler piping next. So, I think that's what's going to be coming next for this after we get this fixed. But I hope you'll stay tuned for that. And if you aren't subscribed, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed.